I'd like to call the regularly scheduled Board of Finance meeting for Monday, September 18th, 2017 to order. First order of business is public forum. Anyone wishing to address the board in public forum? Hearing none, let's move on to item 2. And that's approved minutes. 2.1 is the regular meeting minutes of August 21st, 2017. Any comments, questions, suggestions, changes?
I have one.
Revisions? Yes, Ken.
Page 5. I think dues should be dues. Where is it? Halfway down, Ms. Malavasi. Annual due. Guess they mean dues. And annual dues paid by the police department. And I had another question on page 3. I think when they refer to legal here, it should be capital L, shouldn't it? Because you're talking about a category here.
That's right.
Mr. Gammon asked if they increased legal. Well, Ms. Trudeau said legal was higher this year. It should be a capital L.
Works for me. Anyone else?
There's a couple other typos. No big deal. Top of page 2. After the first sentence, expecting it this month, missing a T. And on page made by Ms. Rails to approve the report, missing the R. I did have question, which I guess we'll get to with the reports about encumbrances. I'll wait till the Board of Ed is up.
On the top of page 6, I think I recused myself from that vote, so it shouldn't be.
I saw a recusal somewhere.
There was a note that I recused myself, but I thought I didn't vote on that.
Yeah, on the following page.
Okay. Copy and paste. Any others?
Yeah, on page 4, I noted that there was $376,000 in the budget for academic coaches, and my question was, how many coaches were there? And I guess Linda was going to get back to me. I don't know if you sent me an email and I missed it, or...
I actually was just going to mention that on another topic, but on August 22nd, Linda did send something out, and she attached a slide from the budget presentation. Said that she attached a slide from our budget presentation that shows the addition of 1 coach and reallocating the 8 existing positions. We were able to have literacy coaches covering K to 6 and math coaches covering grades K to 8. All 9 positions have been filled. So,
okay, thank you.
You're welcome. The other, just while I'm there, the other one of the other questions was about the significant amount of testing that was being done on the schools. Did everybody else get the memo from Linda?
About the asbestos management?
Yeah, the asbestos management.
I don't think
And
I
it's
did.
annual. It's a testing.
I didn't get that. I don't believe.
No, I never saw this. Doesn't mean I didn't get it, but I never saw it.
I have a couple of emails like that too.
It's not the only one.
All right, I'll tell you what. I'll re-forward it to folks.
All right, thank you.
If you guys wouldn't mind. But basically, the error testing was a state requirement for asbestos done at every school, CO North and Lathrop, every 3 years, from which they developed the asbestos abatement or management plan. So, I will. Tracy, you were copied on that, weren't you? No? All right. I was going to delegate, but unfortunately that's not going to happen.
I can resend it tomorrow.
Could you resend it?
I will resend it.
Well, thank you very much, Linda.
I did get it. My comment was before it was about emails that I get that I don't see. I did get it from Mr.
That was what I was saying, too.
I just wanted to reflect that.
Okay, anything else on the minutes? Approve as amended? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, recusals? None. Good. Item 3, correspondence, standing building committee minutes. And Mike, since we don't have any minutes, you have a copy of the draft minutes.
Yes, let me, I had requested a draft of the meeting minutes
even if they were not officially approved, so I could at least report back. I don't know how often that will happen, but I got them. So they are not officially approved, but these are from September 5th, and I figured it'd be better to report while it's still fresh as opposed to wait another month and
Highlights.
wait on them. So the highlights, of course, September 5th was right after the summer was complete. So Baldwin Middle School windows and doors. The project was on schedule, moving along. There were a couple of issues that came up. Operational windows came in a different color. They were still installed regardless because they needed to get in for the opening of school. The decision really has to be made now on whether or not to keep the windows that are in or replace them next summer, obviously at the expense of the contractor and or receiving a credit. I believe Dr. Freeman, who is here, was going to take a look at that and see what the thought was regarding. I guess the color doesn't make a huge difference. The frame, I guess it was fairly minimal in terms of the appearance of it being. I don't know if you felt that way, but the building committee thought maybe that would be the case.
That was the direction we were moving, and then we further found that the windows failed to meet spec and other actual functional components. The windows do not open as fully as was originally spec'd, so at this point we will be swapping them out at the vendor's cost. There'll be no cost and no impact to us.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll probably happen next summer.
Okay. So there you go. There was also an issue with some extra soil having to be excavated. Some additional PCBs were found under soil that was already tested. So this was beyond what was tested. They went further and they found more. There was an estimated cost of about $5,000 to $10,000, which will be covered in the contingency of the project. Electrical
Mike,
update.
before you move on from that,
Yeah,
just
go
a
ahead.
question. When something like that happens and they test an area and they remediate it, I mean, is there, other than the minutes like this, I mean, is there some, like how would subsequent building committees get together and know that that area's been green lighted already and everything's all set? Or they just have to go through retesting again 20 years from now?
It really comes down to whatever gets tested. You know, a lot of these projects haven't been touched for 20, 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
So anything that has to do with PCBs or anything that's environmental, what you're going to find is that it gets remediated, but as soon as you touch it and it wasn't touched before, then it's going to be there. Once it's removed, it's gone.
Yeah, but how do they know
But-
25 years from now?
That it was removed?
Yeah.
Testing.
They got to just retest it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be in the records, but obviously things change. 25 years goes by, records could get lost, so
All right.
typically just retesting it is what happens. But, you know, with
Now,
lead,
is there a requirement to test it every time that you disturb
Yes.
an area like that?
usually, yeah.
Because groundwater can move and repopulate the area, right?
PCBs are a very interesting, as you know, topic right now, because there's been a lot of requirements on PCBs, and now there's some leniency on it that, well, if we don't know about it and you don't touch it and you don't disturb it, then we don't know anything about it. But as soon as you disturb it for any reason whatsoever, it's, you know, okay, you touched it, so now you got to keep
Fix it.
going.
You got to fix it. Right.
It was a much larger issue 6-7 years ago. It was everything had to get tested, regardless. Now it's kind of like, if we don't know about it and you don't test for it, then didn't see it. Sorry. And that's state requirement. So we have nothing we can do locally about that.
Is there a reason why they tested again at that site, or is it because it first sounded like it was clean, but then they tested again? Was there some additional work?
You know,
that was on it?
that's one thing I don't know why. If they had to go deeper where the windows were being put in and
Right.
And they found more, I don't know what the reason was.
Okay.
Usually you take samples and those samples come back, but as soon as you go a little bit further and there's more, then you have to keep going. It's just as long as you keep touching it and keep finding it, you have to remediate it. Electrical upgrades for Baldwin, Jones, and Cox. The consultant was there reviewing the facility assessment, reviewed general information on the systems. I won't go through all of it, but it had to do with electrical service, main distribution panels, power, a number of different issues, and there was a big discussion on that. The next step ultimately is an executive summary, which will include the various options being recommended, costs, associated pros and cons, energy savings, and payback associated with each project. So that's all part of that particular upgrade project. And then there was approval of bills, and then the last thing is our famous one on performance contracting. And possibly there could be, Dr. Freeman could have some input on this. The Board of Education, Board of Finance recommended a third-party review. It was done by Kohler Ronan. And in their report, back to the Board of Education, they projected a $5 million difference between the information provided by ECG and Johnson Controls. As a follow-up, a meeting has been scheduled for Friday, September 15th. Now that was on Friday at 1:30 at the high school for the Board of Education to meet with representatives of Johnson Controls, ECG, and Kohler Ronan to discuss concerns about the differences and to come up with a mutual agreement. Having had attended that meeting, if I did, which I was not able to based on work, I would have sent something out to all of us. I had no idea that this happened. So if there's any kind of report, and Mr. Sands is here, and he's just the person we'd love to have report on that. So,
okay, we did have the meeting on Friday. There were probably 30 to 35 engineers in the room. The meeting lasted several hours, and the engineers were back and forth with acronyms and numbers like you couldn't believe. But anyway, at the end of, there were really three areas that Kohler Ronan had questions about, and each of those areas was ultimately resolved. It turned out that some of the assumptions used in the calculations were not in the material that was circulated to Kohler Ronan, and so once the engineers were using the same assumptions and the same specifications, etc., basically consensus was reached on all three of these points. Kohler Ronan said that they would prepare a report to the Board of Ed that said that these issues had been resolved. So I believe, subject to getting that report and studying it, that all the relevant points were dealt with. It was just a question of mostly Kohler Ronan had to make some assumptions where the underlying data wasn't complete, and in some cases they made some assumptions that were just not the way the Johnson Controls calculations were done, and when they discussed it, they came to agreement.
But the $5 million difference,
It went away.
But had it not gone away and we went forward with the project, the numbers that we've been presented with are all guaranteed by JCI, correct? So if that were to happen, who eats that $5 million?
Well, if it turned out that there really was a $5 million discrepancy, the project would have been resized.
But what if we went forward? What if it were underway and it was determined post?
Then JCI would end up writing some big checks.
Right. Okay.
But they were there with 8-10 people and from different departments, and they looked pretty risk averse to me. So
Kohler Ronan was able to help us in asking some really pointed, critical questions that without that level of engineering expertise, we wouldn't have been able to pursue. And so Mr. Bloss and Mr. Sands were in attendance. I think most of the questions were answered well. And when the board now has it, when the Board of Ed has a chance to revisit this, both Mr. Sands and Mr. Bloss will be able to respond to, in that meeting. The report will be in hand from Kohler Ronan, so I thought it was a very helpful meeting and a very good way to spend 4 hours on a Friday afternoon.
Thank you very much for doing it. It's nothing better to do.
General question. Mike, you were able to get these provisional minutes from September 5th.
Yeah.
Today is September 18th. Why could we not have gotten minutes for everyone to share?
I could have sent them, but I was
I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No. I received them on Friday afternoon. I had requested them because I had received the agenda for the standing building. No, wait a minute. I'm trying to remember how this went. I realized that there was not anything in the package. And so let me just go back for a second, because I did not go to the meeting and I knew this meeting was coming up. And I know what I did. Right after the meeting, I had asked, is there any way that I could get a draft of the minutes prior to the meeting? Is there any way we could expedite it? And I didn't think I was going to get them. And on Friday afternoon, I was out of state, and I saw the email come through. So without being in state, I wasn't able to forward them on. The other thing is that I know, based on the recording secretary who takes the notes, they have to go through the chair of the building committee, and that he wants everything to be going through him before anything is released. And I don't take exception to that. I mean, the chair should take a look at the minutes before they go out. He is typically not able to do that until he gets those minutes, and then he can't turn them around, sometimes in the same day, based on his schedule. So, knowing that he's a volunteer, knowing he's doing everything he can, the fact that I did get a draft version of that on the 15th, which was 10 days after, is usually better than what we get, which is nothing. So I'm going to continue to try to push that, and then we get the minutes when they come through. And it's just a matter of the timing of when these things get done and when they get reviewed and then when they get sent to me. So
they meet typically 2 weeks before us. We should have enough time to get the minutes by then.
Typically, but that's
well, they're under no obligation to get them to us in a certain time frame.
Right.
And it is somewhat always been a courtesy that they've gotten them to us when they could.
Right.
Now, when they get filed as meeting minutes, I would assume they become available, and we could get them into the packets if they're available at that point.
Right.
We can certainly ask Tracy in the finance office to make sure they stay on top of when those get filed, because they're filed in the clerk's office, I believe. Meeting minutes. So if the clerk could identify when they're filed and get copies out to us as quickly as possible.
And I have no problem just trying to expedite that draft, so at least I can report back to this.
Well, and I think it's fair to ask the chairman. The chairman has allowed you to use the draft?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I did.
All right.
Yes.
Then maybe we could get you copied on the draft minutes?
That, again, the draft minutes don't go out to anybody until he looks at them.
Okay.
Usually it's Cliff and it's Scott Ornstein.
Okay.
Are the
So
two that
there are
look
two
at it.
people that look at it.
There are two people that look at it, and I know
Well,
Cliff. I'm not worried about Cliff because I know he gets them. He's right there. But Scott, I know his schedule is very, very demanding. So.
Okay. We'll work to try to get those out as quickly as possible.
Absolutely.
Anything else?
That is all.
That's it?
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. 3.2 pension committee minutes, comments, questions, et cetera. I'm not sure there's anybody here to answer the questions anyway. But yeah, there were a lot of numbers in there this month. But obviously, my attention was because you always go to the bottom of the page, right, to the end of where the contract numbers are. Performance summary: fund growth of 2.7% against a policy of 2.3 in the second quarter of 2017, and then fund growth of 8% against policy of 10.9% in 1 year. So I guess my question, and I'll probably pose it and send it to the chair myself, would be 8% against a policy of 10.9%. I thought we had the assumed rate of growth in the 7.5% range, not 10.9.
The pension meeting is on Wednesday, and that was one of the first questions I was going to ask.
I feel better. I'm in good company. Anything else? I'm going to add, if you wouldn't mind, 3.3, a memo from James Portley, the town engineer, to the Board of Selectmen, which was handed to me just before this meeting. So can we add that to the agenda?
I make that motion. To add
The
this
second,
item.
please.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. This was in response to the question Ken had asked about the comparison of the Long Hill Road project versus the reconstruction of Podunk Road. And I suspect you guys would probably prefer I didn't read the page-and-a-half memo. But we'll get copies out to everybody tomorrow. Trace, do we have this electronically? Thank you. Can we distribute it in that fashion? Thank you. I don't.
To the Board of Selectmen or the Board of Finance?
He went to the Board of Selectmen because I think the process was the first selectman asked importantly to get the explanation. Jim went directly to him, and I believe Joe has asked Tracy to share it with us tonight. So thank you. Item 4, review and accept the report of expenditures of the Board of Education for August 2017. Linda, is there anything you want to, Linda and Paul and Ted? This is a team effort, and Dr. Freeman's here, and we'll spare him the questions on the finance, but he's here to talk a little bit about the start of the school year. So, Linda's going to take the back seat. See how they perform. See how they perform. They may need you. Don't go away. They may need you. Good evening.
Thank you. So I appreciate you entertaining me. I'll take just a few minutes of your time. I have made it a bit of a tradition to join you at your September meeting. I've looked back, and I think this is my 7th time visiting you now in September. Yeah. If the board doesn't mind, I'll just give you a brief report on how our schools opened, and then I'll make way for Linda to join Mr. Sands to report on expenditures. We opened school this year. This is an unofficial enrollment. You know that our enrollment won't become official until October 1st. But as of today, we have 3,362 students enrolled in the Guilford Public Schools. 2 items of note. This continues essentially flat enrollment for us over the last 4 years. For the last 4 years now, we have been within 50 students of 3,400 students. Based on the demographic study that we completed some years ago, we are currently 250 students above the projections that were included in that enrollment. About 4 years ago, the declines that Guilford was seeing stopped, and we have had stable enrollment over these last 4 years, while many other suburban communities in Connecticut continue to see the declines. Our demographic study projects further declines for the next 4 years beyond this, and we're just not experiencing that at this point. With those students enrolled, we opened this September at Guilford High School for the first year ever, offering International Baccalaureate classes at Guilford High School, and we are very proud of that. We have approximately 60 juniors and seniors who are enrolled in International Baccalaureate classes. Those juniors who are enrolled in 2 years will be the first graduating class in Guilford High School who have the opportunity to graduate with International Baccalaureate credentials. Approximately 30 of the 60 enrolled are on track to graduate with those credentials, and we expect to see those numbers only increase over the next several years. Mr. Macenti and I were in the first 10 minutes of the first IB class on the first day of school ever, and I have to tell you, he was very enthusiastic about it. Happy to report that at this point, all certified positions with one part-time exception are filled. As part of last year's budget included a part-time school psychologist position. It's a new position. It's an additional support. We have been holding on posting that position, but all other classes and positions are fully staffed at this time. We have continued for the second year in a row of making some significant alterations to our busing schedule as we move forward this year. We're also happy to report that while we are entertaining some questions and appeals related to changing bus stops around the community, they are nowhere near the number of questions and appeals that we were fielding at this time last school year. Also happy to note that we are looking at some projected savings. We know that we will have savings in the diesel line. We're also seriously looking at the possibility of removing one of our smaller vehicles from the road completely based on the restructuring. But most importantly, the schools opened, the busing logistics opened as smoothly as I have ever seen in my time in Guilford. On the first couple of days, even into the first few weeks of school, it's not unusual for us to be running buses that are late in both the mornings and significantly late in the afternoons. We essentially ran our schedules on time from the very first day of school, which is a reflection of the fact that the runs are becoming cleaner, more efficient, and we're actually meeting the times that we are publishing around our school bus schedules at this time because of those changes. And I really want to credit Marie Illinger. She is the manager with STA who has been working with us for a number of years. Chip Dorwin, who is our new transportation coordinator, and Mr. Jason Bowden, our director of operations, who have really done yeoman's work in that area. I also want to note that, and I don't know that I've ever updated this board on this, but the beginning of every school year, the administrative team and the extended faculty and staff select an individual or an organization in the town, and we recognize those folks as friends of education. It's for somebody who goes above and beyond their job description. It's not just for doing what you've signed up to do, but it's for going above and beyond the call. This year at our convocation, when faculty and staff returned, we were really proud to recognize Joe Mazza as the Friend of Education for the consistent and stalwart support that he has shown to the schools in our community. I think Joe was pleased to receive the recognition. I think it was well-deserved. We were happy to offer it. It's been a really good opening to school, so I'm happy to be here. Again, I want to thank you for all of your support, let you know that schools have opened up really well this year. And of course, answer any questions if you have any.
Great. So what time do you have to cancel school on Tuesday with this hurricane coming in?
Right now, we're expecting a rain event, but we will not make any decision. It looks like the rain is going to start late tomorrow afternoon, so we don't expect any complications for tomorrow. And I'll certainly be monitoring Tuesday evening, looking for any impact that we might have Wednesday morning.
That was really just a joke.
No, I'm serious.
I know you are. I know.
We're just
I know you're prepared. I know you're always prepared. It's just a little early in the year to be worrying about cancellation events. But thank you very much for the update.
We missed the bus 3 times in the first week because it came so early.
They're so on time now that people are missing them.
We couldn't believe it.
Thank you. That's good to hear. Not that you missed the bus.
Good. Anything else?
How's the introduction of the Chromebooks at the lower grades going?
So we have had Chromebooks in the system for students, I think grades 2 through 12 for several years now. The difference this year is that we are allowing students into grades as young as 5th grade to actually take those Chromebooks home with them now. So while we still have Chromebooks available at the elementary schools, those devices stay in the classroom overnight because the students spend most of their time in one classroom. If anything, we've had a few parents express concern about the level of responsibility. And so we do offer an insurance plan to families. There have been a few families of 5th graders who aren't sure that their children are responsible enough yet for that. But that is a very small number. Teachers and Mr. Hamill are negotiating with those parents. In general, it's gone over incredibly well. Students.
What is a Chromebook?
A Chromebook, for all intents and purposes, and for folks our age, it's a laptop. It looks and functions like a laptop, but it is a laptop computer with very limited hard drive or local memory. It's really simply a device for a student to access the internet. So at the schools, we use Google Documents and we use Google Classroom, so the students are able to use the Chromebook to get online, to access their folders and where they have saved all their materials, to do research, and they use them in the classroom as a technology device and a portal to the rest of the world.
And they're fairly tough books. You can drop them and they don't break.
And where laptops would still be at price points anywhere from $800 to $2,000, depending on the model, a Chromebook essentially is going to be $250, $300. We in fact have some textbooks at the high school level that match the price point of Chromebooks. And so at that price point and at that durability, we feel very confident that our students can take them home and access both at home and at school. We have some limited concern around families who don't have Wi-Fi access in their homes, but we have that access available in school, before and after school. It's available at the Guilford Public Library, and teachers always have non-Wi-Fi based homework options for the few families who don't have that ability to get online at home. What's really nice about the Chromebook is a student, if they're not research required, if they're just working on their documents, they can work on a cached copy, and when they come to school the next morning and turn on their Chromebook, the Chromebook recognizes the Wi-Fi, updates all their files, and so even if you don't have Wi-Fi in your home, students can complete many of the assignments. Yeah.
Good. Anything else? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for indulging me tonight.
No. Hey, thank you for updating us for the 7th time. Thank you. It's a tradition. We will continue. Hello, Linda. Welcome back. Hey, Ted, anything you want to bring to our attention?
I actually am going to cover two sets of numbers. First, the final numbers for the last fiscal year. At the September meeting, we made a few additional minor transfers within accounts. We closed out the year with a $8,000 surplus, which on a $57 million budget is pretty close. That was after we made the promised $20,000 final payment into the pension plan. As you know, we've been trying to put additional money into the pension plan because the Board of Ed plan is not as well funded as the town plan. But all in all, the books closed, and we were pleased to see that we stayed in the black. With respect to the August results, the expenditures for August were $2,698,066.80, which in the expenditures and encumbrances through the end of August were 11.22% of the budget, which is higher than the 9.1% which we saw at this time last year. The difference seems to be primarily in two categories. The big difference is timing. Last year, several of our vendors, including our school bus vendor, were slow at the start of the fiscal year in sending the bills in.
Apparently they're faster on all returns.
I'm sorry? Yeah. And so this year they got their act together. And so I think we'll see as we go farther into the year that this timing thing will even out. There's some things like the insurance where it's annual payments and it makes a difference which month you put them in. The other big factor was that this year, for the first time, we made the health savings account deposits, contributions for the teachers, and that's a big number. But last year that was not part of the teacher contract, so this time that came in. As I say, that will even out as we go through the year. Other than that, there wasn't anything unusual in the financials. The warrants totaled $2,365,230.02, and we went over those fairly carefully in the Finance and Operations Committee meeting, but all questions were resolved on that front.
Ted, can I go just a note on the 2016-2017 financials, $8,000 surplus. However, would not have been realized were it not for the large infusion of funds, 287,000?
Excess cost.
From excess costs from the previous year. So suffice to say, this number might have been a little different.
Absolutely.
And there would have been areas where you would have had to have made some significant reductions, right?
No question.
Correct.
All right, just wanted to note that. All right, questions on,
Yeah. On the capital, I noticed that we're like 63% above last year for the 1 month. 87% versus 25%.
So that is the equipment line. So in there is the payments for the previous year's technology leases, as well as payments, purchases for equipment through the technology lease. We will get reimbursed from the leasing company for those purchases once we submit all the documentation. So that will go down again. It's just for the spending from the technology lease.
It is the workman's comp. I noticed that's also, we reported nothing in workman's comp last year. We're up at 26% of the budget now.
It's a quarterly
Timing?
payment, and it's timing. We got the bill in a different time frame than we did last year, and it is quarterly billing.
Linda, the encumbrance on the upkeep of buildings and grounds, it's running in line with last year's number, so we must have had a similar number last year. What is that $500,000 for?
It's a lot of things. It's all kinds of testing, maintenance, all kinds of facilities items, from encumbrances now for snow removal.
So at the beginning of the year, it's the same thing every year, basically?
Yes.
And that's what we had last year as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
We do a lot of blanket purchase orders that will cover through a certain time period,
Okay.
and then we adjust them going through the year as we need to.
The right-hand column is 2016. It's just mislabeled, right, obviously, on all of them.
Yes, sorry about
Yes,
that.
yes.
Sorry about that. Yes,
That's
it
correct.
is.
Yeah, I didn't catch that.
I goofed. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
It's tough when you're dealing with
Sure.
3 different years at the
Comparing
same
apples to
time.
apples. Or not comparing apples to apples, I guess I should say.
Right.
Quick questions for the minutes. So, a couple of good, really nice items in the minutes. There was a significant donations from the Adams PTO for a sound system for the gym, $10,000. That's fantastic. Is that the entire cost to do what's being proposed?
I believe so, yes.
That's the complete purchase and install of the sound system to be made in that.
Wow, that was all private fundraising.
Yes,
That's impressive.
Yes.
That's great. I mean, commendable
yeah.
parent activity there.
The PTOs have been great.
And really the rest of the town, whoever supported their fundraising, thank you to all those folks too. On page 3, the reports from, and then we get these reports at our budget meetings, but it's just nice to see that the testing results came in, and really the town's doing very well, especially in the math section, which has from time to time been a little bit of a concern. 75.6% of the students meet or exceeding standards, placing us in second. So the question though there is, with the remaining students, do these results translate into any activity in terms of trying to concentrate on why students might, what's happening with the remaining 25%, I guess? Or is that not the purpose of the test?
Yeah, that's really not the purpose of the test. So the purpose of the test is, the test is designed to be a measure of how the system is performing overall, more than it was ever intended to be an individual diagnostic for students. And so what we really use the assessment for, and we can now look at the results in 2 ways. We can look at 3rd grade year over year annually. And so 3rd grade teachers can use it to make curricular and instructional decisions about if 75% of the students are reaching goal this year, what can we do differently so that we're impacting more students? And you can look at it year to year. But fourth grade students can also look at those, fourth grade teachers rather, can also look at those results and say, if this is the group coming to me from third grade, how do we plan for those students as they come to us? And so while I hate using these scores to rate and rank compared to other school districts, rather than looking at it and saying, well, if 75% of the students are making goal, that must mean 25% of the students are failing. It's actually more helpful to look at it and say that if you look at how we performed on that math assessment and recognize that we're second in DIRG B, or I believe about 8th in the state of Connecticut overall.
That's fifth.
Yeah, there you go. So you recognize that what it tells us is that we're performing at a certain level statewide. The assessment is never meant to be sort of a pass-fail, end-of-course assessment. It's to be used diagnostically to help us make decisions as a system rather than for individual students. Now, all of that being said, yes, we also then use it to look at individual specific students and make some thoughtful decisions about what we're doing for that student overall and how we can help that student. The new tests are also beginning to provide us with growth scores. And so we not only look at how you perform at the raw score, but the test tells us how you performed as a third grader and fourth grader and what growth we should expect to see from you in your fifth grade year. And we can look to see, are we helping all students to make that growth? But it's really intended to inform our general instruction, not as an individual diagnostic. The old classroom quizzes and tests that you're all familiar with are much better individual diagnostic tools that we use in-house for individual students than a test like this would be.
Okay. So it's fair to say from that answer, thank you, not surprisingly very thorough, there are classroom assessments that take place, and if a student is falling behind, there's a number of opportunities for the teachers, the administration in the building to respond to that student or those students that need some extra attention.
Absolutely, yes. We have a battery of assessments. We refer to it as a portfolio of assessments. So every child over every school year has from really informal classrooms assessments that happen during instruction every day, quizzes, end-of-unit assessments. We use a bank of interim assessments that are provided by the Smarter Balanced company so that we can give assessments during the school year that simulate the experiences students will experience on that end-of-year assessment. And then we have specialized assessments. If we have concerns about children's performance, we have specialized reading diagnostics or special education assessments that we can deliver for students if you have individual concerns like that.
Great, okay, thank you. Thank you both.
Other questions? Minutes?
I have a question on Operations Committee, August 14th. Item 5, the special ed transportation bid. It mentioned that the 4 vendors submitted bids for 18 runs. And STA was given the opportunity to take the runs, and they declined. And I read somewhere else in minutes that they actually oversee it, and they have the ability to match it. I'm just curious, when they decline it, does that mean that they couldn't go lower on any of them, or is there any kind of a cost increase because they couldn't meet it and they declined, or?
No, they would have. If STA was to take one of the runs, they would have to do it for the same exact price as the low bidder. Mm-hmm. And they declined to take any of the runs. Okay. And they don't tell me why, whether it's lack of drivers, whether it's they can't meet that price.
But based on their contract, they have that option.
But they have the right of first refusal in their contract. So
in the past, they have sometimes taken runs.
Right. But it wouldn't cost us anything because it's a matter of matching.
Right.
No, they have to match the low bid in order to do that. But for whatever reason, this year they didn't. They chose not to do it. Now we had a good number of bidders this year, and we had I think a better bidding climate, and so that probably means that there weren't any outlying, only one situation where there was only one bidder and they bid something high, and so STA can come in and make money under that. But no, we had a very healthy bidding situation this year.
Good. Any other questions?
One question, Peter, on the warrants. There's a $2,400 reimbursement. I assume that was to a parent. And my question is, why would a parent pay for tuition as opposed to the school, picking up the tab? Why would there be that type of a situation?
It could be a settlement. It could be a case where we're splitting the cost, and the parent chose to pay the whole thing, and we're reimbursing for a portion. A lot of times it's a settlement that the parent has to pay and provide documentation that they paid, and then according to the settlement, we reimburse up to a certain dollar amount.
And it would be basically a school that we have selected?
Not necessarily.
If it's not necessarily, it could be if it's a settlement, it's where a child is placed. There was a settlement that the child, we would pay for the certain costs. So we have to reimburse based on the settlement agreement.
In some cases, the state designates where the child's going to go, and in some cases, it just depends on how the settlement works out.
Okay, thank you.
Linda, thank you for the summary of the tuition account line item. Obviously, we had some changes, unexpected infusion of students needing some, and this just illustrates the difficulty with forecasting budgeting on this. For private tuition, based on your enrollments as of last January, February, you were projecting $1.7 million with 21 students. The actual student count is now 27, and the anticipated expenditure is $2.2 million. So you basically have opened the doors on the school year, and you're looking at an additional $500,000 worth of cost, offset by ECS money. But nonetheless, we would have been looking at nearly, because there are a couple other categories, the public tuition and in-district high school costs. No, please.
Just worth noting that the board finalizes their budget in February, and so those special education tuition numbers, from our perspective, are nearly 9 months old already. And so, exactly to your point, it's one of our most volatile lines, and with the budgeting calendar, we almost have the whole year behind us by the time we open the doors in September on that budget.
Exactly.
Although there's one item here that I think is helpful. As of right now, I believe we have no settlements pending. We have no cases where we're disputing with parents. And so the numbers you see there are the result of several settlements, quite a few actually, that occurred over the summer. And we tried to get the whole thing settled and clean before the start of the school year. We think it's much better for the students and the parents. So never say never, but this should be more indicative of what's going to happen in the year now.
Well, the figures are...
Somebody could move out of town. Somebody could move into town. I mean, these things happen, but there aren't. Last year we had several situations that were overhanging us at the start of the school year. This year we don't have any.
The figures seem fairly stable from what you projected in March and what we were just handed today. It's almost the same.
Yeah.
Same number of students. In private tuition was 27 now, 27 in March. Public tuition, we dropped down a little bit. It was 33. We were 36 in March. So these figures seem to be stable.
Well, I think the difference, Ken, is that you're looking at actuals in March, and they always age out. There are children who age out of the program.
Yeah, that's
So the
what-
numbers you saw in March are actuals, are not reflective of what they had projected in January or February.
We had a significant number of students age out
Right.
as of the end of the school year.
I thought that was
Yeah,
this, you had a
there's
lot
one- there's
aging
one
out
other
this
point
year,
I
though,
wanted-
right? 11 are coming out
We
this
have,
year.
we have
I
a
thought.
lot coming off at the end of this year. We did
Yeah.
have a few come off last year. I'm trying, it was 4 or 5 this year.
Yeah.
And then there are a lot
Aren't
coming
there
off at
11
the
coming
end
up?
of, end of this year, yes.
What age did
Jeff.
it come off?
21?
21.
Right, okay.
Well, so there can be exceptions to that. So students will age out of the system when they receive a diploma, or or at the end of the school year in which they turn 21, unless there's an appeal and there's some special need that is recognized and that we continue beyond. But it's generally at the delivery of the diploma or at age 21.
Okay.
Well, the numbers are important, obviously. The other thing to remember, though, is that the tuition and the cost may vary substantially from student to student. So you can't just go strictly by numbers of students per year.
Cost is very individual.
There are a couple costs in here that are not definite ones.
They're estimated.
They're estimated. We were still trying to get some definitive numbers. So this could change a little bit, even if the student count doesn't change.
That much. Good. The one thing I also wanted to bring to mind is that we are now receiving revenue to offset some of those those holes.
Yes.
We have. It looks like we have tuition being billed to Madison and Old Sager for students who are now taking advantage of our in-house program. Is that correct?
Those numbers are an estimate. At the time this report was done, we were still gathering all the information to put together the bill to bill those 2 districts.
Okay.
So it actually will probably go up a little bit more from that number.
Excellent. So back to the old cost-benefit analysis that we went through several years ago, we are now starting to realize additional return beyond the savings that we're getting from not having them out of district. We are now actually earning revenue.
In a small way, offsetting local costs because of the expertise and the capacity that we built around our own children.
That brings a question to mind. What's the current capacity to take on additional out-of-town tuition? Is there a kind of gray area?
It's always going to be fairly limited because we staff the programs based on enrollment. And so, we're not building in capacity to create empty seats with the hope of selling those seats. So while we staff up to meet the needs of the students that we've identified locally, there's always room within those staffing numbers to accommodate a small number of other students in each of the programs. So it's hard to put a figure. It's not like we have empty seats that we know we can fill. And we would never continue to carry capacity if our local enrollment numbers didn't require us to do so. But there's always a little bit of wiggle room. It's the same argument we make that when 2 or 3 students leave district, it doesn't mean that you can immediately make savings because those numbers are distributed. Yeah.
Good. All right. Anything further? No? Thank you. Is there a motion to accept the bills of the Board of Education for the month of August? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Item 5. Review and approve the report of expenditures for town government for August 2017. Sandy, welcome. And they sent you out here by yourself? Mary Jane's attending a conference, I understand?
She is.
Good.
She's in May.
All right. Anything you want to bring to our attention, or you just want us to throw some questions your way?
Do my little stuff.
Do your stuff.
Okay. Revenue, the overall town revenue is on track with 52.9% collected at the end of August, with the tax collections already at 53.9%. The police department, the reason for what it looks to be a reduction in collections at this point is due to the increase in the budget for the police services. Since the largest collection comes in during the last quarter of the year, the percentage collected will lag behind until then. And I did notice when you look at it's 1.7% collected on the revenue spreadsheet. I checked it because they were behind posting the outside services, and they are actually at 9.7% for this month. So, other state of Connecticut revenue received to date includes judicial branch receipts and the pilot from the Regional Water Authority. These are revenues not affected by the state budget. This morning was brought up the golf course, the difference in the percentage. The fiscal 17 figure includes operating fund transfers in from the general fund. Every year we gave them $30,000, and this year they didn't get it because they're in the general fund. And if we took the $30,000 out at August 31st, we would be at 26.7, which is very in line with what it is without it.
Okay, good. Thank you. That was one of my questions. Okay. Anybody, is that it on revenues?
Yep.
Can we entertain some questions at this point?
Golf revenue's down 19%.
You should just explain it, that they're...
I'm sorry.
The golf revenue.
Yeah, but the year-over-year comparison is unfair because they had $30,000 worth of
Okay,
transfers
right.
in there. So-
Right, that
Sure, I
always
got
went
that.
in at the beginning of the year. So.
Anybody else? No? Hold on, Sandy, just a quick question. Engineering and Public Works, now, I know I knew this at one point. Street excavations, what are those under? Because we seem to be way over budget. And if you don't have an answer immediately, that's quite all right. We can get back to it.
Yeah, I'm thinking road. I'd have to get back
Yeah.
to you. I'll ask.
Good, thank you.
Double check.
I should know that.
And revenue is up in engineering and public works?
It is slightly.
We know why?
Well, street excavations is probably a good piece of it.
Yeah, there's permits that
Okay.
are being taken out.
Okay.
But I'll ask Jim tomorrow to get a better.
Lou?
Questions on revenue? No?
Nobody else on revenue? No. Expenditures.
Okay, expenditures. The expenditures we're at 16.6% this year, and right now we're at 15.2 obligated, down from 18.2 last year, so we're a little bit under. One of the August debt payments was not posted at the time of this report, so the additional expense will bring the percentage obligated as of August 31st closer to 34%, which compares favorably with last year at 35.5. Information systems, the Munis has changed its billing to an annual instead of a quarterly, therefore causing the difference in percentage obligated at this point. Engineering and Public Works, the current year purchase orders bring their percentage higher than where they were this time last year, so they just put in more purchase orders, blanket ones. And there remains a freeze on capital projects except for emergency services, public safety items that have been released already.
Very quickly, just to go back, when you talked about the Munis payments, annual, were you talking about information systems?
All
Or-
our Munis contracts and what fall under information systems.
Okay, because that was one of the ones I circled.
Yeah,
and I
software.
saw that the
Yeah.
software was, was much higher, and I didn't know if that was a typical.
No, it's because they changed the way they
changed it
bill
to
us.
annual. Okay, well, that was that question. That one now. Thank you, Sandy.
Is that the only one you had? Sandy, just a quick question. Debt service, principal and interest, obviously there's a timing issue there against last year. Is it just the schedule is much easier for us? How long does that window last that we're sitting on those funds?
The payments already, went out August 1st and August 15th, but the August 1st, the invoice, which came in sometime in June, got misplaced, and the woman that I was trying to email at US Bank no longer works there, so my email was going
To the ether.
to somewhere, I don't know, and
It's
finally
the-
when I got a hold of somebody,
Gotcha.
the report's already done.
Gotcha. Okay. So, just wanted to make sure that we were making our debt payments.
That's why she said
'Cause our
15
covenants.
is low, because
Yeah.
the payment is more likely
Yeah,
to
yeah,
bump up
right.
compared.
The covenants. All right, anything else on expenditures?
Special fund?
Special fund? Questions?
A question, where are we on that resurfacing of the skate park? I know we just appropriated $141,000. Is that all finished? Anybody know?
I know we made a
I thought I saw it was done.
I believe it's
done.
It had
That was
opening
about done.
day. I believe it's done. This looks like application one. I
Well,
thought the
that's the
total
tricky
price
part.
was more than the 140.
I know if this is the first one, there's another one coming.
I thought we had one already. That's why I was surprised by this. I assume that means
I thought the budget was like 154, that's why.
Oh, so it's finished.
That could be wrong.
It's definitely finished. We know that.
It's done.
Sweet, yeah.
But the question I have, that I have had every month for 3 or 4, and I still would like to see the ledger, because one of these days I'm just going to vote no to this, because I want to see, I see the money, the $478,000 for the Long Hill Road project, which I've been skeptical of from the get-go. We're told the monies are coming back in somewhere, but all we see is a lot of money going out. I'd like to see something that shows how much money has gone out and how much money has come in.
Well,
I know it's not, you haven't been here, so I'm not trying to be critical, so, but every month I bring this up.
Well, I do know that just this morning, Jim Portley brought a bill to Joe. We have to pay it, show the bills being paid, and then they go to the state.
Right.
The state has not been real quick about turning around and sending funds back, even if, they have everything, so we're waiting. We can
But
definitely...
then there's the federal component, it's the larger component too. Is the federal money coming back?
I'll have to double check, because like I said,
Yeah, so I didn't mean to put you on the spot. It's
But
every
I
month
will-
it's the number one item.
Okay.
And I have no idea how much we've paid out. I know what in theory what it's
I think- I
supposed to
thought Mary
be.
Jane said she was going to put a
She
reconciliation
did,
together
she
for
did.
us, so I'll check with her and make sure she gets us one for the November, or the September, October meeting, one of those meetings, the October meeting, and it's really just a schedule, so she keeps a schedule.
Well, I'd
Yeah,
like to see
I'd
it.
like to see it, exactly. I will,
she did mention that she was going to work on the capital report,
Yeah.
but because she
We've been
wasn't here
waiting
for
for
this meeting, she wasn't able to get it done in time,
well,
so.
I think this is a
We
step
haven't
further
had
than
that,
the
we haven't
cap.
had that in about 6 months.
This is a step further than the capital report. This is a specific reconciliation on that account, the inflows and the outputs, the
Okay.
outflows.
The project started April? Long Hill?
I don't know.
I'm just wondering.
See, I was told that we had
I'm
already-
wondering, and the state and the federal, I'm just wondering if it's, the lag time is somewhat appropriate if they're behind. I mean, I agree, we should see.
But the
that.
other thing is, I was told that we paid so the project was initially going to be a $2 million project. We were going to have 10% of it. And I was told that we met that 10% obligation years ago in the engineering study that was undertaken for the project. So that should be, those monies were dispersed 2 or 3 years ago. I think they started working on this thing. So in a meeting 6, 8, 10 months, maybe even a year ago, I was told that we'd already paid out that 10%. But then the cost of the project doubled, so presumably we are obligated to put in another $200,000. But again, I'd just like to see where all of that is.
I do remember trademark, because I do balance the bank statement. We have gotten 2 payments that I'm aware of. One in July, it was about $148,000, and then another one in August from Trademark for 240-something thousand. And they're the ones, that money came in, so,
It's offset against the funds. Right.
yeah.
All right, just, I'll take from Portly's letter that he had sent. The bids came in last December ranging from 3.324 million by Trademark to well over $4 million. Guilford is responsible for 10% of the cost, which at this point is approximately $335,000.
So the total estimate has come down from 4 million down. That implies that we're back down to 3.3 or 4.
Yeah. Yep.
That's a step in the right direction.
There you go. I thought you might like that.
Yeah, I do like that.
Which is, it would have been nicer to have this to pass out to everybody, but I will.
And the other thing that I thought was interesting, if you see where the money's coming from, the funding source is fiscal year 12, that 2.3 million, presumably from probably a referendum item back there. Yeah.
Bonding authorization.
I mean, that would make sense of project.
Yeah, so that's probably when the engineering studies began.
Yeah, right.
Right. I mean, there's, since it's along the water course, I mean, there's a bunch of reasons why that would be slow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. Anything else on the warrants?
I have not a question so much as it was given the school high five. I'm going to give the town, a little one here too, there's an item in here about the Shellfish Commission, and made me remember. They had a nice display, I mean, really a nice display at the fair.
Yes, they did.
And, it's a way, we're always talking about deliverables, and there's a way an easy way to get out to a lot of folks some of the good work one of these commissions is doing, and it was well done, and they deserve congratulations on that good job.
Good.
I thought those folks were volunteering their time, they were happy.
Great. Anything else on weekly checks or special fund checks or warrants for that matter?
I just have a question on the weekly warrants, the non-special funds on the second page, about halfway down. There's two items, relatively small amount, $232 each for weather service, is for engineering and public works. I'm just wondering what that might be related to.
We pay as a weather service, that's where they get their information on the storms that are coming. They're usually spot on.
Better than the guys on TV.
Yeah, we call Ralph when the big storm is coming. Yeah.
I love it.
They've had it for years.
Yeah.
But it's an equipment rental, and it's just, or it's under that. Do they have equipment, or what exactly is it that they're?
I'm assuming it's a special type of radio, and the rental for, or you have to pay the radio fee, or, but I mean, I can get specifics.
Okay.
That'd be great.
That'd be
No,
great,
it's
thank
good.
you. It's great that they're accurate.
Yes, it's very accurate.
But I just was wondering what exactly it was.
I did have a question on special fund. Wright Pierce, the third item there for $40,944, water main feasibility study. Is this for work that has already been done prior to the referendum passing, or is this subsequent to the referendum passing, and this is actually the start of the
I
project
think that
going
was the
forward?
engineering work for the
Design services.
design services.
So it's underway then?
Yeah.
Okay, good, that's what I was looking for. Anything on warrants, anyone?
Further here.
This was just more an observation than anything on the warrants, page 17, Satcom Global, Iridium SIM card. So,
Like 4 years ago.
yeah, I know. I'm assuming that's communications, and I'm assuming that's for satellite communications connectivity in the event that all cell service and landline service is down. Is that? Sorry, that's an awful question.
I think that was it.
Yeah,
They sort of keep the satellite phone in reserve.
right.
So that would be interesting to hear. And how many, is it just the one? It's interesting.
More than likely.
In which case, yeah. Who keeps it? Is it the police or the fire?
Fire. Then sitting on page 65 on the warrants, second from the bottom, COT Systems, Inc. I know this, I think this believes this is town clerk expenses relative to record keeping, microfiche, and so forth. What does monthly resolution mean? It's an unusual, it's almost like a reconciliation of the accounts or something. And I know you don't have, I don't expect you to have an answer to that at this point. Thank you.
I noticed the Sharrows, I didn't know that's what they were called, by the way, the Sharrows, the little bicycle things on Whitfield Street, you know, when they put the bike lane in there? I thought that was a grant that somebody gave us, though. It's not a lot of money, but I see $2,300.
23.
Page 13. I assume that's what that is. Do you know what Sharrows are? Sharrows? No, I assume they're talking about the, no, I don't know what that is. I assume it's the bicycle, yeah, Google it.
Go to the phone here.
It may be a combination, the last four letters might be rights of way, so it may exactly have to do with the bike path or something like that.
I just assumed it was the
Shared
bike
right
path,
of
but
way.
then
Shared right of way.
But then I
Shared right of
thought,
way.
because some people were complaining about it, and I thought somebody
just a
said it
guess.
was,
The marking is placed in the travel lane to indicate where people should preferably cycle.
Nice, there you go.
Leslie, go.
Huh?
That'll be in the Times crossword puzzles.
But anyway, I thought it was donated by somebody. Apparently it wasn't.
It could have been because it's out of prior year.
The problem is, I think sometimes the donations are for the initial installations, and then the town's responsible to maintain going forward. I mean, that's not an unusual model.
You know,
But this was just
the
painted,
paintings,
right?
though, it doesn't really make sense because the road is so narrow, there's really not a bike path. I mean, literally, if you took it for what it's worth, I mean, my God, you get run over.
Yeah, it creates an awareness. I'm aware that
There could be.
it makes me think twice. I don't know.
Well, also
I think
gives
it's okay.
runners, it also gives runners a little wider swath too, right?
Well, it might give people a sense of security.
Yeah, you know, 99% of the people in Guilford are very courteous, but that 1%, they like to play chicken when they see you. They really do. They want to see who's going to blink first.
You always have to have an escape hatch, right? Quick jump to the lip. All right.
I'll find out if that was donated or.
Thank you,
It's not a
Sandy.
big number, so.
What else do we have? Anything else?
I thought I had one more, but I'm not finding
it. Good. Medical?
The health report, the August claims are higher this month. However, the administrative charges were lower than budgeted, and other revenue came in a little higher. Overall, we have a projected deficit of approximately $47,000, and it is too early to project the effect of the teacher's claim offset at this point.
Yeah, if you take a look at last year's July and August claims, they were $2.3 million, and these are about $2.3 million, $2.2 million. They tend to be, you know, outside of catastrophic health issues. There always seem to be a lot of folks who take advantage of the medical plans in the summer months. Right? We've seen that year over year. So
Yes.
so hopefully, like last year, it will sort of smooth its way back up. Building permits. Any? Nope.
Just when you think it couldn't get any lower, it gets lower.
Well, it's only 2 months, so that would project out to 30. That would project out to 30.
Last year,
Oh, that would be great.
that happened.
Thanks, sir.
Last year was 15.
Yeah, projected out at 30. All right, anything else? No? Sandy, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Sorry to give you so many questions.
Oh, no, that's good. I'll get back to you tomorrow.
That's fine. If you don't have all the answers tomorrow, that's fine. All right, is there a motion to approve the bills for the town, the amount of $4,463,283 for the month of August? And a second? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Recusals? None. Number 6, committee reports. I don't think we have any. Mike took care of the building committee stuff. Old business? New business? Public forum? Going once, going twice? Sold. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's a long time.